Hey, it's Chase. Are you interested in architecture and philosophical existentialism? I'm assuming you are if you clicked on a video with a title like this. I'm here to show you how these two very similar areas of thought are the core to this video, and I'm going to talk about how I like to think about these two incredibly complex topics myself as well. I've always had an interest in the discussion of the meaning of life and the idea behind existence. I also studied architecture in college, so I thought it'd be interesting to combine these two areas of thought and see how they intertwine. To start, I think I should clarify where I fall on the scale of existentialism myself. I like to think of myself as an absurdist, but that could be argued as another excuse for an optimistic cop-out, but I have no shame, so. For those who don't know, Absurdism was founded by Albert Camus in 1942 when he wrote a mythological story titled The Myth of Sisyphus, and it encompasses this entire philosophical idea, but that's another video for another time. So, to dumb it down, absurdism basically states that the universe is inherently meaningless and chaotic, but humans are consistently looking for the meaning behind it. This does sound like a depressing paradox when you put it that way, but we as individuals can still derive our own personal meaning within our own experiences and the people that we interact with on a subjective level. As an architect, I love diagramming, so I thought these would help out. If existentialism derives meaning from solely existing and being, and nihilism says that everything is meaningless and futile no matter what, then absurdism is kind of a happy medium where we can find subjective meaning within our own existed experiences, even if reality itself is chaotic and meaningless. Now that all the review is out of the way, I can jump back into what the heck this has to do with architecture. Architecture as a profession affects people and society every day, and it's a particular career that responds to its environment, either enhancing it or hindering it. Good architects design and develop meaning behind every project they produce. Individual projects have their own meaning and respond to their own surroundings. It's just a building that people do stuff in though, right? Who cares? But this is where I see a connection between architecture and absurdism. Reality as a whole might not have a meaning, but it affects and influences us every day as humans, and it's the same way as architecture. Now this is Robert Venturi, widely known as a strong influence over what we know today as postmodernism. Postmodernism is a tricky subject as well because it's not really a style, but more of a way of thought and how one interacts with reality and society. To help visualize this, I'm going to throw in some more diagrams here. If classicism states that it's this way because God said it and it always has been this way, and then modernism is to strive to be better and improve, then postmodernism is scratch everything you know and then figure out why you know what you know to know. This summarizes it pretty well, to be honest. It's like this cynical, ironic, self-aware take on reality, I guess. Anyway, Venturi designed the Venturi house, which was his mother's house, in the late 1950s, which was decades before postmodernism even became widely known. I think this house is a perfect example of how architecture and absurdism can connect. Through Venturi's architectural experimentation and complex contradictions in his design, I can find a lot of absurd ideals in this house's concept and execution. In Venturi's published work, Complexity and Contradiction, which might be a bit too on the nose, he explains his processes and thought behind the Venturi house himself. A few examples of contradiction Venturi gives us in his published work are complex and simple, open and closed, big and little. Some of the elements of the house are good on one level and bad on another. He also achieves the difficult unity of a medium number of diverse parts rather than the easy unity of a few or many modal parts. The facade, or the front face of the house, represents the symbolic nature of what a home is. Front doors and windows, a gabled frame, and a large chimney create this simple image. However, it's the scale and the placement that might throw onlookers off. Robert also writes that the interior plan of the house represents the symmetrical consistency of the outside. A central vertical core contains two elements, nudging the other for space. The staircase, a rather solid element, wraps up the chimney, as the oversized fireplace, a void space, is rooted in the hearth of the home, both of which seem to try to compromise with the other. Another interesting element to this home is the quote-unquote nowhere stair, which at first glance seems like a useless, whimsical, meaningless staircase, keyword meaningless, but it actually acts as a ladder to clean the upper window and paint the clerestory. Robert likes to describe this house as little with a big scale. There's not that many moving parts. Like he said, it's a medium number of diverse parts based on an inclusion and acknowledgement of the diversity of the experience. But everything is just a little bit off, but that kind of makes it work. Now that we dissected Venturi's house with Robert, let's talk about what this has to do with the postmodernism movement and absurdism. One way to describe postmodernism is the skepticism of objective truth and ironic self-awareness that humans create through their own meaning through discourse. Not that any meaning is inherent in anything we see or say, and it's all society-based and society-driven. This is where absurdism comes in, and when we apply meanings to things in our lives to create our own meaningful experience subjectively. Postmodernism's tongue-in-cheek cynicism and absurdism's lighthearted take on existential crises we all have can seem vague and obnoxious, but it's actually a positive outlook on life. Questioning objective quote-unquote truths and embracing chaos and developing the individual experience is the heart of these areas of thought. As an architect student, it's important to know that architecture and design should have meaning behind it as well. Architects should be responding to the built environment around them and offer something new and beneficial to society. Evolving design styles, technological advances, and sustainable practices are a few of the dominating factors impacting new architectural development. Designers get to decide which factors influence their work the most and which ones matter to them the most, and, like Absurdism, determine the most meaningful experience through all of the chaos. Everything I've said so far could very well just be a stretch, but I thought it was interesting to dive into these two things that I like to think about and talk about the most. Hopefully now you'll start to notice the reasons behind different actions and decisions and how it might relate to, or not at all, any philosophical phenomena that you adhere to the most. But with that, see ya!